The office had its usual rhythm. Quiet tapping of keyboards, the hiss of the espresso machine in the corner, someone laughing too loudly at a meme. I settled into my corner desk, hoodie up, headphones ready, codebase open. Just another day. Just another sprint. At least that's what I thought. I'd barely run my first command when a shadow fell across my screen. I looked up and there he was, Adrian Vale. The new hire. The one with the resume that made everyone buzz and the attitude that made half of them roll their eyes. He stood there like he owned the floor, laptop tucked under his arm, sleeves rolled up like we were in some startup commercial. Murking. Course. "You're Lena, right?" he asked. "CTO said we're teamed up on the new feature drop." Gave a slow nod. "Right. AI-based friend suggestions." "Exactly." He pulled out the chair next to mine and sat down like it belonged to him. "Good news, you're working with the best." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, did we clone me already?" That smirk deepened. "Cute. I like sarcasm. I also like clean code." I peeked at the repo. "You've got skills." Wow. A compliment and an insult. Impressive multitasking. I call it multi-threading. He opened his laptop. "Let's see if we can sync our brains as fast as we sync our branches." I stared at him for a second. He was so confident it was almost funny. But beneath the cockiness, there was something else. Curiosity. Rive. A spark that said he actually cared about the work. I crossed my arms. "Fine. We'll start with the logic tree. But if you overwrite my functions without asking, I will revert your commit and rename your files to something very unflattering." His eyes gleamed. "Deal. Just don't fall in love with my code too fast." I rolled my eyes and turned back to my screen. This is going to be a nightmare, I thought. But I was already smiling. It was almost 10 p.m. Everyone else had gone home hours ago, but the soft blue glow of monitors still lit up the office like a second moon. I rubbed my eyes, then glared at the error log like it had personally offended me. Line 372. Again. "What even are you doing, Adrian? Speak of the devil." He leaned back in his chair next to mine and groaned. "I swear this bug is gaslighting me." I didn't look at him. "Maybe if you stopped declaring everything like a JavaScript cowboy." I like cowboys. Clearly. Your functions have no discipline. It's like spaghetti but worse. He laughed. It was low and warm and a little too contagious. Spaghetti code with swagger. That's my specialty. I side-eyed him, but a smirk tugged at my lips before I could stop it. "Great. Remind me to fire you when I become CEO. You're aiming low. CTO isn't enough for you. Please. CTO's just a glorified cheerleader. I want to build stuff, break things, leave some chaos behind." He tilted his head. "You're kind of intense." Shrugged. "Better than being forgettable." He was quiet for a second. I glanced at him, and caught him watching me like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "Not the code." "Me." "What?" I asked, suspicious. "You're not what I expected." "Because I don't smile at your dumb jokes." "No," he said, almost too soft for his usual tone. "Because you're sharper than everyone here, and you don't seem to care who notices." I froze for half a beat. My heart did this weird thing I didn't like. I masked it with a shrug. "Well, someone has to carry the project while you debug your self-esteem." He grinned but didn't fire back right away. Instead he looked at the screen again, then sighed. "I should have caught that logic error earlier. I think I was too busy trying to impress you." "Oh, that shut me up." I stared at him, then back at the screen. My voice came out quieter than I meant it to. "You're not bad, you know. Just annoying." "I'll take that." He nudged his chair a little closer. "Oh, partners." I hesitated, then nodded once. "Partners." The office was quiet when I got in, just how I liked it. Mornings were my time. Fewer people, fewer distractions, and just enough peace to pretend the world wasn't on fire. I set my laptop down, plugged in, and reached for my coffee. Except, it wasn't there. Instead, sitting right where my usual boring black coffee should have been, was a cup with a bright yellow sticky note slapped on the side. Don't worry. I didn't spit in it. I stared at it, then at the note, then at the doorway, just in time to see Adrian stroll in like he hadn't just invaded my carefully structured caffeine routine. He dropped into his chair beside mine, didn't say anything, just started typing. I picked up the cup, sniffed it. Hazelnut. Just enough milk. No sugar. My order. How did you know? I asked. He didn't look up. You always toss the sugar packets in the bin without opening them. I'm observant. You're creepy. He grinned. And you're welcome. I tried not to smile. Failed. We worked in silence for a while. Just keys tapping and the occasional shared glance when one of us cracked a problem. It was easy. Weirdly easy. Like we'd been doing this for years. Eventually he leaned back and stretched, arms above his head, shirt riding up just a bit. Completely not my business, but my eyes went there anyway. Stupid brain. So, he said casually, you ever take breaks? Only when legally required. Well, he said standing up, lucky for you, this break is under protest. I raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah. Whose protest? Mine, he said, reaching over and plucking the coffee cup from my hand. We're getting fresh air. You've been glaring at your screen like you want to punch the compiler. I stood reluctantly. Fine. But if this turns into one of those weird team bonding things where you make me talk about my feelings, I'm going back inside. No feelings. Just coffee. And maybe a cinnamon roll if you behave. We stepped outside, the morning air crisp against my skin. I took a sip of the coffee he brought me, trying to ignore how nice it felt. Be seen. Noticed. He walked beside me in silence for a few minutes. Then he said, without looking at me, I meant what I said yesterday. You're the best dev I've worked with. And blinked. You've worked here for like a week. He grinned. True. But I've worked a lot of places. I didn't say anything. But the compliment stayed with me. Warm. Like the coffee in my hand. Like him. Maybe this project wouldn't be so bad after all. It started raining just after 7 p.m. Not the usual drizzle that came and went like flaky coworkers. This was a full downpour. Sheets of water sliding down the windows. Thunder rumbling low in the distance. I was the only one left in the office. Well, almost the only one. Adrian was still here too, hunched over his screen like he could physically wrestle the error out of it. His hair had fallen into his face, damp from when he ran back in from grabbing his charger from the car. He didn't even notice me watching him. He looked tired. Not just the work all day kind of tired. The kind that sits behind your eyes, deep in your bones. You're quiet tonight, I said finally. He glanced up surprised. Yeah. Rain does that to me. You afraid of storms or something? He gave a half laugh. Nah. Just makes me think too much. I hesitated. Then pushed my laptop away and turned slightly toward him. About what? He was quiet for a long second. My sister. And blinked. You never said you had a sister. Had. He corrected himself softly. She passed away 2 years ago. Car accident. Rainy night. Just like this. The air shifted. I didn't say anything. I didn't know how to. So I just listened. She was younger, he went on. Wild. Smart as hell. She was the reason I got into programming. We used to stay up coding little games together. She made me promise I'd build something that mattered. You will, I said before I could stop myself. He looked at me. And for once, the usual cocky glint in his eyes was gone. What was left felt raw. Maybe, he said quietly. Some days I wonder if I'm just pretending I know what I'm doing. I exhaled slowly, then admitted. Same. His eyebrows lifted. You. Miss, I will rename your files to embarrass you. Even me, I said with a small smile. I just hide it better. He smiled back, but it was different this time. Softer. Like we weren't just coworkers anymore. Like we were something else, something almost delicate. The storm outside thundered again, but it didn't feel so loud anymore. Adrian leaned back in his chair and looked over at me. Thanks for not pretending I didn't say that. Thanks for trusting me with it, I said. Even if you are annoying 80% of the time. He chuckled. I'm working on lowering it to 70. We didn't go back to coding after that. We just sat there, in the glow of the monitors and the hush of the rain, two people pretending they weren't slowly falling for each other. The next morning felt weird. Not bad. Just different. Like something had shifted between me and Adrian after the storm, after the honesty. I couldn't stop replaying his voice in my head. The way he said had. The way he looked at me like I was the first person who really saw him. I was halfway through a new module when laughter rang out from the kitchen. Not just any laughter, his. I glanced over the top of my monitor. Adrian was leaning against the counter, grinning at someone like she'd just made his entire day. The someone was Nadia, UX designer, shiny hair, perfect eyeliner, and the kind of effortless confidence that made people orbit around her. I told myself it was nothing. I really did. But when she playfully nudged his shoulder and he laughed again, my stomach twisted. I turned back to my screen, fingers flying over the keyboard like the code might erase the heat in my chest. Jealousy's a buggy emotion, a voice in my head whispered. I ignored it. But of course Adrian came over 5 minutes later, coffee in hand, casual as always. She's funny, he said, like it wasn't obvious he'd seen me watching. I'm working, I muttered. He didn't say anything at first, just sat back down and opened his laptop. But I could feel him glance at me. Like the silence between us was too loud. You okay? He asked eventually. Kept typing. Why wouldn't I be? I don't know, he said slowly. You tell me. I turned to him then. You don't have to explain anything to me. You're allowed to flirt with whoever you want. His brow furrowed. Whoa. Hold on. I wasn't. Doesn't matter. Apparently it does. I bit the inside of my cheek. I hated how defensive I sounded. Hated that he noticed. Hated that part of me wanted him to explain. You know, he said, voice lower now, for someone who says she doesn't care, you're kinda bad at hiding it. I looked at him, ready to throw another sarcastic comeback, but then I saw his face. Not smug. Not teasing. Just sincere. Curious. Like he wanted me to admit something. I swallowed. Maybe I just don't like distractions, I said quietly. He leaned closer. Not touching, but close enough to feel the heat from his arm. Is that what I am to you? He murmured. A distraction. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't know what to say. 'Cause no. He wasn't a distraction. He was the thing I kept pretending I wasn't already falling into. And right then, his hand brushed mine on the desk. Barely a touch, but I felt it everywhere. I didn't pull away. Neither did he. Started with a bug. Course it did. The deploy broke something in the back end, and half the team had already gone home. I was knee-deep in logs, fingers flying, stress chewing at the inside of my chest. Adrian stayed. He always did lately. We'd been quiet for a while, working side by side, occasionally brushing shoulders, pretending we didn't notice. Pretending the tension wasn't crackling like static between us. I think it's the auth function, I muttered, squinting at the screen. The callback isn't resolving properly. Want me to check it? I nodded, and he leaned in close, his eyes scanning the code. Close enough that I caught the faintest trace of his cologne. Clean, warm, like something expensive I'd never admit I liked. He was talking, pointing something out, but I couldn't focus. Not on the code. Not when his hand brushed mine again, and neither of us moved it this time. Not when he looked up at me and stopped mid-sentence. Not when the silence grew heavy. I could feel his breath. Lena, he said softly, and God, my name had never sounded like that before. I should have pulled away. Said something sarcastic. Broken the moment like I always did. But I didn't. Instead I looked at him. Really looked. And then, he kissed me. It wasn't planned. It wasn't smooth. It was messy and sudden and everything I didn't expect. But the second his mouth touched mine, all that tension, all that holding back, it broke. My hands were in his hair before I realized it. His were on my waist, pulling me closer like he'd been waiting for permission that finally came. The office around us didn't matter. The code didn't matter. Only him. Only this. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathless. He looked at me like he wasn't sure if he should apologize or kiss me again. I beat him to it. "I'm going to pretend that didn't happen," I whispered. He gave a shaky laugh. "Yeah, total accident. Just heat of the moment." "Right," he said, brushing his thumb across my jaw, not moving away. "Definitely not something I've been thinking about for weeks." I stared at him. And for once, I didn't have a comeback. We didn't talk about it. Not the kiss. Not the way my hands had been tangled in his hair. Not the way he looked at me afterward, like he'd tasted something addictive. We came in the next day like nothing happened. Like we were just co-workers again. Like we were still playing the game. Except we weren't. Everything felt off. Tilted. Too quiet, too charged. His chair suddenly felt closer. His voice lower. His glances longer. I opened the project dashboard and pointed at a task. "You're on the optimization module, right?" He nodded, fingers flying across his keyboard. "Yup. Just rewriting your inefficient code." I rolled my eyes. "Wow. One kiss and you think you've earned the right to insult my logic?" He froze. So did I. It was out before I could stop it. My heart thudded in my chest as he slowly turned toward me, brow raised. "So we're talking about it now?" he asked carefully. "Nope," I said way too quickly. "That was hypothetical. A metaphorical kiss." "Metaphorical?" he echoed like he didn't believe it for a second. "Completely hypothetical scenario in which I momentarily lost control of my mouth, and brain, and spine." He laughed. Quiet, low. "Yeah, okay. Metaphorical." We went back to typing. But I kept glancing over at him. And every time I did, I caught him glancing too. Once, our hands brushed when we both reached for the same notebook. I snatched mine back like it burned. 5 minutes later, he bumped my chair with his foot under the table. On purpose. The smirk gave him away. I glared. He didn't stop. I'd love to say I ignored him. I didn't. I was smiling. Like an idiot. Like a girl who'd been kissed and couldn't stop replaying it in her head. We were so not going back to normal. By lunch, Nadia stopped by our desk and raised a perfectly sculpted brow at the awkward tension hanging in the air. "Everything okay over here?" she asked. "You two are oddly quiet." "We're fine," I said too quickly. Adrian nodded, deadpan. "Just working on metaphorical features." Nadia gave us a look. I didn't meet her eyes. We lasted exactly 4 more hours before Adrian stood up, tossed his pen on the desk and muttered, "Screw this," and blinked. "Screw what?" "Pretending." He leaned closer, voice low. "I don't want to pretend I don't want to kiss you again." My stomach flipped. My brain stopped. My mouth. Well, she had opinions. "Then don't," I whispered. We didn't kiss again right there. But we almost did. And honestly, that was worse. Started with a bug again. Somehow it always did. Except this time it was on my personal project. A stupid little weather app I'd been tinkering with in my spare time. The UI was clean. The logic, not so much. Adrian offered to help. Said it casually, like he didn't need a reason to be around me outside work. Like we weren't still tiptoeing around that kiss. So now we were on my couch, laptops open, half-eaten takeout on the table. The city lights blinked through the window behind him. His jacket was draped over the back of the chair. He looked comfortable here. Too comfortable. "Your async function's hanging," he said, nudging my knee with his. "You've got a promise that's never resolving." "Wow," I said. "Thank you, Captain Obvious." He smirked. "You love it when I'm right." Love is a strong word. So is pretend it didn't happen. Froze. He didn't even look up from his screen when he said it. Like he'd been saving that line, waiting to toss it out casually between API calls and sarcasm. I closed my laptop slowly. He did too. The silence stretched. Finally I said, I didn't mean it. That got his attention. He looked at me, really looked. I didn't want to pretend, I added, voice quiet. I just didn't know what to do with it. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. His voice was lower now. Warmer. What do you want to do with it now? I hated how nervous I felt. Like I was 15 and about to say something dumb. I want you to kiss me again, I whispered. He didn't hesitate. Not this time. He crossed the space between us like gravity was pulling him. His hands found my face, gentle but firm, and then his lips were on mine and cut. It was everything. Slower this time. Deeper. No rush, no hesitation. Just the heat we'd been avoiding for days, maybe weeks. He kissed me like he meant it. Like he'd wanted to for a long time. And I kissed him back like I finally stopped being afraid of where this could go. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. You're gonna mess me up, Lena, he said, barely a breath. Smiled. You already did. We didn't talk much after that. Didn't need to. Somewhere between debugging and takeout we stopped pretending and started falling. I woke up in a tangled mess of sheets. Sunlight slicing through the blinds in harsh, golden stripes across the room. And then I froze. Adrian was still here. His jacket was crumpled at the foot of the bed. His shoes were abandoned somewhere by the door, and his hair was everywhere. Messy, unstyled, like he'd been running his hands through it all night. I couldn't remember when we'd both fallen asleep, but I could remember the feeling of his lips against mine. The way he held me like I was the only thing that mattered. I swallowed, trying to shove the rush of heat from my chest back into the safe, quiet place it usually lived. This is fine, I thought. It's just one night. Just a kiss. I told myself that a few more times before I gathered the courage to peek over at him. His eyes were still closed, breathing steady. But even in his sleep, there was a slight tension to his face, like he was holding something back. Like he knew that this moment, whatever it was, had changed everything. I slid out of bed slowly, trying not to make too much noise. He shifted a little but didn't wake. I breathed a sigh of relief and grabbed a blanket to drape over him, then went to the kitchen to make coffee. I needed something to steady my hands, something to calm the chaos in my chest. When the coffee was ready, I stood by the counter, staring into the steam rising from my cup. My heart was beating faster than it should, like I was waiting for something, waiting for him to wake up and pretend none of this had happened. Waiting for me to pretend none of this had happened. But I couldn't. I had kissed him. We had been together. In every sense of the word. And I couldn't go back to pretending that none of it mattered. I wasn't sure how long I stood there before I heard him move behind me. Good morning. His voice was hoarse, still thick with sleep. His hands reached around me, brushing lightly against my waist, and I couldn't help but lean back into him. His warmth, his scent, all of him, was exactly the same as last night. Good morning, I said, my voice quieter than usual, like I was afraid of what I might say next. He kissed the back of my neck, brief, gentle, a reminder that the night before wasn't a dream. You okay? His voice was still soft, almost vulnerable. I took a shaky breath, trying to steady myself. Yeah, just thinking. He turned me around slowly, his gaze not quite meeting mine. He was waiting for me to say something. Anything. But I didn't know what to say. And then he sighed, brushing a strand of hair out of my face. You don't have to say anything right now. But I'm not going anywhere, Lena. I met his gaze then. His eyes were open, raw with honesty, and it hit me like a punch to the gut. I'm not either, I whispered, because God, if I said anything else, I might ruin this. And for once, I didn't want to ruin it. He smiled then, gently, like he knew exactly what I needed to hear, exactly how to calm the storm inside me. He pulled me into his arms, and I let myself melt into him, breathing in the scent of him. Coffee, rain, and that quiet, comforting smell that was just him. I think we need to talk about what happens now, I said eventually, voice barely above a whisper. He chuckled. Yeah. We'll talk. Maybe after another coffee. I nodded against his chest. Yeah, after coffee. And maybe, just maybe, after we stopped pretending everything would stay the same.
We're two hearts in the dark, chasing whispers through the night. Secrets buried in the stars, hidden in the pale moonlight. Every glance feels like a spark, every word just out of reach. We're dancing close but standing still, on the edge of love's mystique. In the shadows